And it is week 3 of college football corner this week. We're looking forward to it. All kinds of good games. You look at the schedule, you're thinking, but you know what? There's actually some really interesting, good games out there we're going to have on the slate for you this week to talk about. So, without delaying any further, I got Randy to my right, screen right. If you look at that on the screen, Randy, how's it going this Friday morning?
Going good.
This is a little unusual time for us, but we're trying to fit it in wherever we can. This is always the birthday weekend from my end of it, and we schedules galore. This is the way it worked out to this week. So, Facebook, give us a like, YouTube, subscribe, hit the bells, and maybe someday we'll have a join where you guys can donate if you want to. Once we see some people watching, we'll see if they have any money. Or we work for food too, so we'll take coupons. So, what do you think, real quick? A little recap of last week. How'd you feel about the games after they're all done? The whole everything going on.
Well, I was absolutely shocked at the Notre Dame game, and I mean, honestly, to me, that's inexcusable for Notre Dame. Uh, they go into Texas A&M into a hostile situation, and they win that game, and then they come back and just at home against Northern Illinois, and that was just an unbelievable thing to see. The other thing was, of course, Alabama and South Florida, which was a heck of a game until the last 7 minutes of the game, but it was kind of Groundhog's Day, so to speak, because at this very exact time last year, Alabama played South Florida. The score was 17-3, and that was after coming off a loss to Texas. So it wasn't a big surprise that was a competitive game, but it certainly throws up a red flags. As you well know, I've been bashing their quarterback situation. I'm still not a believer. He was a Heisman candidate last year, and hopefully things will work out for him, much like it did last year. But it's kind of deja vu right now. We're seeing the exact same thing we seen 1 year ago.
With Jalen Milroe, we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But those two games, my one thought with Notre Dame and the NIU game, Northern Illinois, coming off of a big road A&M win, which is a hard-fought, tough game, hostile environments. A lot of people felt pretty good about that, like you said. Do you feel that was a hangover, or is that okay? Notre Dame's got some issues, moving forward. How do you feel about that particular situation?
Well, I'm not really sure how that, why that happened the way that it did. My thought is, lack of preparation and focus on who you're playing. You can't let up in college football.
Right.
Any week. I don't care who you're playing. I think it was just maybe just looking right past them. Hey, this is kind of a cupcake and off week for us, and they didn't focus enough or take it seriously enough. I'm not really sure. I didn't see big issues the week before. A good friend of mine who's and my son, including, who is a huge Notre Dame fan, was not happy at all. They said, the quarterback play, he missed several wide open guys. I didn't watch all of the game, so it was hard for me to say. But going off what they said, they were really disappointed in the way that game went and the preparation for that game and how they played, which was obvious from the outcome.
Yeah, not taking anything away from Northern Illinois, but I think if I'm not mistaken, the Riley Leonard, who's a quarterback at Notre Dame this year, transfer from Duke, I believe he has yet to throw a touchdown pass this season, if I'm not mistaken, which is a little concerning. A&M, okay, I can maybe see that being a hard place to go in there. You're trying to grind out a game. But he did throw 2 picks last week, and the last pick was a deep ball that he severely underthrew, and that gave NIU the chance to get in a position to kick the game-winning field goal. So there's a little bit of play calling too. Like, you got a lead and you want to grind out the ball. We saw, I think, a couple teams last week where the team was punting, hoping to get the ball back, and they never did because the other team eats the clock, eats the ground. So.
Right.
There's some Freeman's got a little heat. I don't want to say heat under his seat necessarily, but just a little heat. Like, hey, management of the game. Granted, they're hoping they go out there and just stomp NIU or at home, first home game of the year. Now they go to, Purdue, and it's on the road, West Lafayette. We know what happens in Purdue. Big teams come out with a loss, wonder what's going on. I'm not saying it's going to happen. You never know. You would hope and think that, because I think these teams play each other quite a bit because they're both in Indiana, that Notre Dame's okay, look, they're on the road again. Sometimes when you go on the road, it's good for less distractions. But, they got to go in there and got to get a win. If they lose this game, then I think it's really going to be interesting because Purdue is not supposed to be a great team. They're a Big Ten team, so they got Big Ten talent, so to speak, not 5 stars, but still it's Big Ten talent. And Notre Dame obviously is supposed to have elite players, and they do. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. I would take Notre Dame in the game, but I'm not going to say they're going to blow the pants off. If they do, good for them. If the Riley Leonard shows up, has some big scores and big passes, maybe it's a little sigh of relief, at least for a week or so. So, but that's one of the interesting games is what's going to happen to Notre Dame. Purdue wins or losses doesn't really matter on them. They're not expected to be a CFP playing team, but Notre Dame certainly is and was. So
right.
We'll see. So
yeah. And then if the quarterback play doesn't improve this week, I think they're probably definitely going to have to start looking for a change at that position.
Yes,
they can't have that for three straight weeks.
Yeah, and highlights another issue that they're touching on is sometimes you're getting these transfer quarterbacks. They had one last year from Wake Forest. I can't remember the guy's name, and then this year it's Riley Leonard from Duke. Doesn't always mean you're getting somebody that's going to fit well in your system, gel well with chemistry, everything. So it is interesting sometimes. So hopefully, if they have to make that change, they got somebody on the bench that is ready to go. Maybe is in the system a couple of years, or who knows. So Alabama, you touched on also. Obviously, I don't feel like it was a worrisome hangover thing. It's more of the team's really good, but yes, the quarterback play has had some issues last year, off and on. This year, that's almost more of a. Do they got to change the tactics again and maybe be more of a running team with Mildo running because he can run. The guy is super fast.
Oh yeah.
They're very and they got great people at skill players. Just change it up a little bit. Don't rely on the pass so much. I don't know, but I don't know. Do you feel their defense is a little bit better than last year? Because I know last year the defense seemed to take a step back a little bit on how far as let people score and stuff. Do you feel that's about the same, better, or different, or?
Oh, I think it's better. I think they played a heck of a game, the first 2 weeks, and I think they're going to be better on defense, across the board. I don't know, they lost some key guys to the NFL, but right. I think they're going to be okay defensively. They usually are, but in the game today, when you play a team, that spreads you out and runs you to death, so to speak. And then, you come in and go 3 and out. You come in and go 3 and out. All of a sudden, that defense is wore down pretty quickly because you can't keep them off the field. And, that's a problem for any team, regardless of how good their defense is. One of the things with the Alabama thing was I see, they were talking about a stat the other day, and the guy's like, so far what we've seen from Alabama, in 2 big games, Texas and then Michigan, and if they're in a position where they have to throw the ball, they have not done well.
Okay.
So I don't know that's going to. I don't know what kind of effect that's going to have at Wisconsin. That's going to be an interesting game. Obviously, Alabama's a couple touchdown favorite, but they were also a 30-point favorite, which the score of that game didn't indicate how that game went. You consider they were in a 14-13 game with basically 9 minutes to go, and then of course they were bigger and they're stronger, and they were able to
deeper.
Plus some driving, and they scored quickly on long runs, which is big plays. It ain't like that they did some dominant thing of driving the field to get those last 3 touchdowns. So, definitely, a little bit of a concern for Alabama, but like I said, this is the same exact thing, and I probably said the same exact thing at this same point last year. with the way it went. Like I said, that exact game at South Florida was
Yep.
17 to 13. So do they do what they did last year and bounce back and respond and turn things around? I mean, they got Wisconsin, then they have Georgia coming in. So the next couple of weeks is going to tell us a whole lot about Alabama.
Yeah, I certainly agree. No Nick Saban, not that that's a huge outlier, but have a tendency to feel, Saban, and he did right the ship last year. They did get into the playoff, and he's done that many years that he was at Alabama, where if things start off bad, they make adjustments, they get things going in the right direction, whatever they have to do, switching quarterbacks, whatever. So, Kalen DeBoer, there's no reason to think he's not capable, because he's got a decent track record. So, we'll see if he can do it, so to speak. It's a little different this year because there's so many more teams in the SEC and the Big Ten that are good. You're adding those teams in. Like you said, there's a stretch coming up. It's going to be really interesting. So it'll be fun to watch, but if I had to pick one that's going to probably right the ship out of those two, I would definitely still pick Alabama over Notre Dame. No offense to Notre Dame. It's just Alabama, a little bit longer of a track record, seeming a little bit better and deeper of a roster and all that. But they play tougher talent. They play tougher teams too. So it's give and take. Wisconsin is kind of interesting because they're not the Wisconsin of old. They're running the air raid offense, which I'm very surprised they're doing that. And if nothing else, if Fickell falls flat on his face in the next 3 or 4 years, that'll be the reason they say why it happened to run him out of town, because Wisconsin's a pound and ground school historically. So this is very different for them. And, I don't know if they're there yet with that whole team. It's a second year. So I look for Alabama to win this game. If it was at Tuscaloosa, I feel really good about them dominating the game. It's at Wisconsin. It's kind of a thing where it's at night. I don't know. It's at noon, so they're lucky they're not playing at night, in my opinion, because that place goes nuts at night. Camp Randall, They do so much like anything. Alabama comes to town, they'll be up for it if they can weather the first quarter storm, if you will, as far as the fans going nuts. And then to get the fans, back in their seats, and then it's a football game. So I definitely look for Alabama to win the game. It'd be nice, obviously, if they really dominated the game, because that would make you feel a lot better about what happened last week. Almost like, okay, look, you got to take every game like it's a serious game. Not that they did that last week, but the South Florida, did the same thing last year. So, very interesting. I know there's another game. Well, where's it at here? It's this one right here. 0-2, Florida State, coming off a bye week, playing the coach's school that he came from, Memphis, Mike Norvell. It's at Florida State. Everything you look at, you want to say Florida State should win this game. But we've said that the last 2 games in a row. So It's going to be interesting. I mean, if they don't come out and win this game, I don't know. I don't sit there saying Varell's job's on the line out there. It just means this season's over from a CFP standpoint. I just don't see them recovering. This is not a conference loss, but they already have 2 conference losses. This is a CFP-ish type 3 losses because it's they take all of it. So they won't be winning the conference championship, with 2 losses probably, but that would remain to be seen. But if they don't win this game, it really just spells a lot of lack of trust in the program, or what's going on. So. And I don't know much about Memphis other than the guy who's a head coach followed Norvell, who was on the staff. So it's almost like business as usual for that team. They didn't have huge wholesale changes in the way they play and what they do and stuff. So they're up. Memphis should come to town and should be really up for this game. Yeah, hope Florida State has got this game. They have 2 weeks to prepare for this team. I mean, that's another kicker. They don't win this game with a week off before. Wow, this is going to be the headline on Sunday morning, actually. So, big game. I mean, it's not a numbers game, but it's a big game.
Right. Well, and Memphis is not the challenge to Florida State that Boston College and Georgia Tech was. Both of those teams were, pretty solid programs on the upswing.
Yeah.
Memphis, I don't know that they are quite on that level. So this should be a little bit better game for Florida State to bounce back, so to speak. I mean, if they're capable of doing it, even to me, even if this game is close, it's somewhat of a loss to Florida State, because they really need to make a statement and really perform here. if this game is really close moving forward, I can see the Florida State just, falling farther and farther, down the hill. So yeah, like you said, this will be an interesting game, at the, but it is home for Florida State, and there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to take care of business here. But
Yeah.
we thought the same thing about Notre Dame last week. So.
Yeah, I mean, Florida State 0-2, two conference losses, and they were pretty much manhandled in both those games on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Georgia Tech and Boston College really came in there. One was in Dublin and the other one was in Florida State, and pushed them around. So in Memphis, they shouldn't have trouble pushing this team around. But if something weird happens and it's business as usual, they get pushed around like the last two games, then you got to feel it's somewhat inside the culture. It's not just the players, because these guys FSU guys should be bigger and better and stronger, deeper. But if they're not playing as a unit because everybody's infighting or whatever, and nobody knows this is going on, who knows? But that would be the kind of thing that's happening. Is there's just dissension, there's people bickering, pointing fingers, and nobody's playing as a team. I don't care how good you are. If you're not playing as a team, you're going to get beat by teams that are playing like a team, like a Boise State, which is the kind of team. Well, you called that last week. Boise State darn near pulled the upset in Oregon, overtime for crying out loud. Wow.
Yes. Yeah, that was. I was kind of wondering about that. Boise State's just one of those teams that, always prepared to play, especially against the bigger teams.
Yep.
But you were talking about pushing somebody around and basically bullying a team. What Texas did to Michigan was really impressive. I mean, they came into Michigan and just flat took it to them in every aspect of the game. What does that tell us for Michigan? I mean, I don't know. Is Michigan going to struggle that much, or is Texas really that good?
Right.
Honestly,
or both.
Texas, a little bit of both. I mean, I know Michigan's not what they were last year. They're down. They went through so many changes, and we had talked about that. But on the other side of that, I do believe Texas is really good.
Yeah.
I think Texas may be on the outside of being one of the top three teams in the country.
I certainly don't disagree. They one of the things of that game is their running game going to be able to do it, because they lost two running backs in the preseason, in camp, the season-end injuries, and they didn't really seem like they missed a beat. The blue guy who was there last year, he ran good. I think it's because they just got a really good dominant offensive line. He didn't break any 80-yarders, but he ran great, and they had a couple other guys too. And there's something to say about sustaining drives and driving down the field. That's how you wear people out, and then the fourth quarter things really fall apart for that other team because the defense has been on the field way too long.
Right.
And that's they took the opening kickoff and drove the field, had defensive or offensive penalties, put them back, and they still drove the field and got score and got the ball and got a score again. I mean, nothing stopped them, not even themselves. When they tried to stop themselves, they still got in there and scored. So
right.
That was that was an impressive win. As an Ohio State fan, I loved every minute of it. It's right up there with App State. I mean, it's just Oregon, App State, and now the Texas win. But as a college football analyst and all that, Michigan's got quarterback troubles. I mean, they got a walk-on who, and I'm not. He has a great story, battled leukemia. And
great story,
fantastic story. But it doesn't take away from the fact that they don't have superior quarterback play. They don't have great running play right now. What is their strength is their defense. What's left of it, the couple defensive line guys, and they played decent against not elite teams like Texas. They didn't have anything. They didn't have an answer for Texas. It got so bad that Loveland guy was dropping passes, and he's their best player on offense.
Right.
So they got I looked at their schedule, and they got Arkansas State this week. They should win that game. It's in the Big House. Then they got USC coming to town next week. And I don't know, man. After what I saw USC do the last couple of weeks, I think they're not Texas, but they can score points. And I don't know if Michigan can score points, even on USC.
Yeah, I mean, so far, since you mentioned USC, to me, USC, in the first couple of weeks anyways, they really seem to be a whole lot better on the defensive side of the ball.
Right.
I mean, that was their downfall the last couple of years actually.
Yep.
I mean, actually, Lincoln Riley's whole career from Oklahoma to USC, that's been the issue, has been defense and stopping the ball. They've always been able to that they've always been able to score points
Yeah.
you know, so that, and then talking about how good Texas looked. Oregon is the opposite of what Texas is. Texas was highly rated early on, and they really looked the part plus some. Oregon is the opposite of that. Highly rated and everything, and all the early stuff and all that, but yet, the first couple of weeks they have not been all that impressive.
No, they've won, but they've had struggles doing it against teams. Idaho, Boise State. Boise State's not Idaho. They're better, but at the same time, they had to go to overtime, and they're at home to win that game. It's almost like USC is doing what they thought Oregon was going to do. They had Oregon. They could be with the best team in the Big Ten. They're going to be up there. It's going to be Ohio State and Oregon. Ohio State and Oregon. I'm not saying it's going to be Ohio State, USC, but USC certainly look like more the part the first 2 weeks than Oregon does, and they go into the big house and whop them up next week. And Oregon doesn't, turn around. Oregon's got a decent schedule too. They got to play. They got to play Michigan at Michigan and Ohio State at home.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting, but it might be where USC is battling for, up there in the top 3 or 4. And Michigan's playing, it almost looks like even Penn State struggling at Bowling Green. Who is the number 2 team in the Big Ten? It could be USC, early, but you never know, because now Bowling Green had a nice win against West Virginia, and then they darn near laid it against Bowling Green. At home. That was interesting.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, that'll be interesting. And like I said, coming up, Michigan, USC, that's going to tell us a whole lot more than what we're even talking about right now.
Right.
Kind of like, from the show me state, we're going to actually get to see it. And that'll give us a really good idea of where Michigan State or the USC also, but I think that's going to be a much bigger test for Michigan than it is for USC.
Yeah, and Michigan State having real troubles with Florida Atlantic, the first game, which was on a Friday night, and that's Tom Herman. He used to coach Texas and was an offensive coordinator when the Buckeyes won the national championship with Urban Meyer. Then second week, Michigan State goes on the road to Maryland and wins, and I was expecting that. I'm thinking MSU's in all kinds of trouble. They look really bad against Florida Atlantic when they won. Well, that's a tough place usually to go for them and win on the road, unless you're an elite team. So is Michigan State getting better each week with that new coach from Oregon State, or is Maryland in trouble? Who knows? Because they don't have Tua's brother anymore. There's a lot of changes, so that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Who's fighting to be at this point behind Ohio State after 2 weeks in the Big Ten? They haven't played a Big Ten game yet. Rutgers don't look too bad. They got a crazy easy schedule. No offense to them. Iowa, they went out and lost to Iowa State. Who saw that coming after their first week lighting it up?
That was a heck of a game.
Yeah, it was.
There was, but the Big Ten, for the last, I don't know how many years we're going on now, the last 15 years, the Big Ten runs through Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. Yeah. They the last couple of years they've had losses to Michigan and really those were a whole lot closer games than what some people probably realize. Big run or something like that. So, the Big Ten still runs through Ohio State, and I don't see that changing. And we thought, we know Michigan's down. We thought, the big test is going to be Oregon. Well, I'm starting to really question that now, even with Ohio State going to Oregon. I'm really starting to question how big a test that's going to be with the way Oregon's going right now. Of course, like we always say, we will see as all this plays out. So it's getting, each week is getting more and more interesting in telling us a little bit more about the teams we move forward, which is always the case. And that's why I love talking about this and watching these games. I get my Saturday is last week with the Big Ten games, usually the big games at 12 o'clock, with Michigan and Texas, and this week Wisconsin and Alabama. So that just means you're stuck to the TV until like midnight.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had to go to a friend's house early on. So halftime of that Texas Michigan game, I went to his house. He a little party for him graduating from college and as an adult, and he had this brand new 85-inch TV in his basement. So I watched the second half on a screen that made the people look bigger than I am, and I'm pretty
Well,
big.
yeah,
Yeah.
I bet that really hurt your feelings.
Oh yeah, I'm down there. People are coming down to look at look at the basement, and then I'm down there, and I got a recliner going. I got and they said you look pretty comfortable. I said I am pretty comfortable. Just you guys do whatever you want to do. When I leave, I'll turn off the lights. I might be out here a couple hours.
Yeah.
A couple games.
Oh heck yeah.
So yeah, it was heaven. So one other team in that mix for behind Ohio State, so to speak, we have to talk about Nebraska. They put the absolute beat down on Colorado. Man, it was ugly.
And actually, I mean, I know Colorado beat them last year, and they were in. Nebraska was in a train wreck situation, and
Yeah,
they've come a long way. I mean, that wasn't completely surprising. Colorado's the same
I agree.
thing. Same thing that we seen last year. That they're going to struggle to stop anybody, and then you watch Colorado and you watch what's going on and how they respond and how they act, and the guy walking off the field before the game's over and everything.
That was bad.
I just really question what exactly is going on at Colorado. Now we have all these accusations of this happening and that happening. Did it? I mean, we haven't had any positive proof yet,
Right.
but that is just looking more and more questionable, and so I really kind of wonder what's going on there and how that's going to play out once Coach Prime. Once his kids are gone, what happens then? Because it sure seems to me that's what that program is all about right now.
Yeah, they're seniors. I guess they're done after this year. If I'm not mistaken. If they have another 3-win or less season, when it's all said and done, it's not so much do they run him out of town. It's only been in 2 years, or does he just leave because he's going to do something else? I mean, I literally saw, if it's true, where the band is not allowed to play the fight song when Shedeur scores a touchdown. They wanted to play his rap song that he wrote. I'm like, really? I mean, is that what we're looking at here? And that, to me, if that's true, shows a culture that is not great, where you go into Nebraska where Matt Rule's like, hey, my guys are ready, and we're ready to ground and pound to win. And they looked like it. They played great football on both sides of the ball. They ate up their lines up on both sides of the ball the whole game. It was not even. It was ugly for Colorado. It really was. It was a bad look. Good for Nebraska. So we'll see. Dylan Raiola looks like a decent freshman. There's no doubt about it. So
Right.
you got good defense, good line play, and a quarterback that protects the ball. You got a lot in college football. There's no doubt.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and like we were saying, in the game today, with everybody with the spread offenses and all that, and we were talking about this earlier in the show that how important it is to sustain a drive, to keep your defense off the field, and that's what as moving forward as we watch these teams and especially these top teams that we have a pretty good idea of who those top 5 or 6 teams are already. And it's going to be interesting to watch them. I mean, can they take a drive? I mean, it's great to have a big play. Hey, 80-yard touchdown pass. Hey, an 80-yard run. But I mean, that's all fine and dandy and great and everything. But when it comes down to it, and when we get down to the playoffs and all that stuff, it's going to be that team that can drive the field, keep their defense off the field, get a few stops. Because in today's game, that's really all you need is to get a few key stops here and there, to win and be successful to get to the top of the college football level.
No, absolutely. Moving on, because I know we got a little time crunch here. I put this on the board because it's I don't want to say it's a must win for LSU, but they want to win this game. It's on the road though, and South Carolina is always a sneaky team.
Yeah, they are.
And I think it could be a tough win because it seems like LSU and USC's defenses last year were not great at all. I think USC's done a lot better job, what seems like, but I don't know if LSU's got a better defense going. and they certainly haven't seen the offense like they did last year with that Heisman Trophy winner, where Miller Moss in USC seems like he's kind of picking up where Caleb Williams left off. He's throwing a lot of touchdown passes, and he's not turning the ball over as much, So I'm wondering about LSU, and this is not one of their marquee games. They, they're in the SEC, so they got a lot of tough games ahead before this one. But this one, they can't look over South Carolina going in there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, LSU is my Michigan. Compared to you, I do not like LSU. I would love to see them get beat, but I mean, and you're right. South Carolina is one of those teams, much like a Boise State and Appalachian State, Troy. Some of those teams that just kind of sneak up on you, and if you're not fully prepared, just ask Notre Dame. One of these teams get up, but this is a much higher level.
Yes, absolutely.
South Carolina, can be very dangerous. They've knocked off Alabama, in the last few years, I don't know, 4 or 5, whatever it's been. They've knocked off some big teams in that
Georgia, or take them to the fourth quarter a couple of years ago.
Yeah, something. In this conference, South Carolina certainly has played very well against the better teams. They seem to play really well against the better teams, and then maybe have a little bit of a letdown against some of the lesser teams. But
right.
So this game definitely, will have my attention and some interest of how that's going to go.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think LSU's got to just come out, and they really need to get on them and stay on them, and if they don't, if they're not leading in that game, by halftime or something, all of a sudden, it's one of those games where the longer you let them around, the more you start worrying about it. I don't think South Carolina's worrying about anything. I think LSU might be worrying that they got to win this game, because that'd be another loss,
Yeah, LSU don't have to do any of that stuff.
Yeah, I got you. A&M into Florida. I got this for 2 reasons. A&M lost at home. Now they got to go to Florida, which, Florida and Napier, the clock is ticking. They've been talking about before games even started this year, how long he's going to make it during this season. It's a little bit of what's been going on the last couple of years, and a lot of what the schedule looks like this year for them. It is crazy tough schedule for Florida. They're at home. They got to win this, and I just don't know if they can or will with A&M, coming in, who I think is just a better team all around. So this is, but if A&M loses this, I think it's a good win for Florida and a really not a bad loss for A&M. So very interesting game, from an SEC standpoint, but especially from a Florida and their coach's standpoint. How far into November will he make it? They're kind of saying.
Yeah, right. And what we've seen, in the last, from what we've seen in the past, Florida and Florida State both have, just all of a sudden, hit a landslide here, from where they were. And they both got these per se these marquee coaches that were coming in and expecting great things, and they were going to do this and then do that. And really with the exception of Florida State last year, who had a great season, and they had some really really good talent at until he went down at quarterback play.
Yeah.
But now both of these teams seem to be going in the opposite direction of what everybody expected from them. So. Yeah, you're right. Texas A&M coming in to Florida. One of these teams is going to walk away with a big win and possibly change their whole season.
Yep. And A&M with a new coach, Mike Elko from Duke, played Notre Dame tough. Notre Dame, how they played in NIU, that doesn't tell us a whole lot about A&M. So I don't know if we'll learn anything about A&M other than if they just go in the swamp and stomp them like Miami did. Again, I don't know if that's going to tell us a lot, because Miami, we just don't know how good Florida is. So, but a win's a win. They both of them got to get this win, and whoever doesn't, it's not great for either one. Maybe a little worse for Florida because they're at home.
Right, absolutely.
But sticking with the SEC, I think this one looks like a really good game. They're really high on Mizzou. They're 6th in the nation. They haven't really played anybody this year. No offense to them. The schedule. But they're basing a lot on returning players, coach, what they did at Ohio State in the bowl game and everything else. And BC, this could be a shocker in Missouri. or Missouri could just, another game, another win, but either way, it's, I really think watching what Boston College did to Florida State, they're a much better team than they have been. They got Bill O'Brien. He's from Boston. He went to Boston College, I think. It's just he's a hometown guy. He's in his hometown, and he's at his alma mater, and he's coaching.
Right.
He's an NFL guy, Penn State, coach,
Alabama.
and team's looking good. Yeah, Alabama team's looking good. So I think it's a big game, and they're both ranked. I know Mizzou's 6. I think BC is 12 or something. I think that they're decently ranked. So it's a decent game, ranked on rank in the SEC.
Yeah, Missouri, another one of those teams that, at times Missouri's made a lot of noise in the SEC, in the past, few years, several years. Like I said,
Yep.
I almost lose track of time now. Oh man, they just won a couple. Well, that was 10 years ago. But Missouri has. They've actually won that side of their division a few times. So they're one of those teams that and it seems like they're on the upside right now, much like Boston College is. So yeah, a real interesting game.
Yeah, they were once before Georgia made their kind of mini run where they won 2 in a row. It was just before that, Missouri was giving them fits, to get to the that side because they were in the same side as Georgia. I believe they're not in the Alabama side, so it's much tougher on that. Now it's all straight up and down, but we're talking historically. Right. So yeah, it's. Off the top of my head, I didn't even thought about this, so I don't even know who I would say is the best team in the SEC right now. Well, Georgia, I'm sure. They play at Kentucky, and I don't even know if that's a great test. If you think it would have been the last few years, even though in the last couple of years when they played Kentucky, they handle them. So it's at Kentucky, but I don't think Kentucky's expected to be as good of a team as they have been, and Georgia hasn't had a problem yet. Carson Beck, tons of touchdowns. I don't think he's thrown a pick yet, and they're almost business as usual. And I haven't heard anybody say, is Carson Beck better than Stetson Bennett? But starting to lean a little bit like, maybe this guy is better than Stetson Bennett. He throws over complete 70% of his passes, which is pretty incredible. So he might be the real deal.
Well, he may be, but Stetson Bennett's got two championships under his belt. So and they didn't quite get there last year. Maybe wrong that they didn't. As good as they were, but yeah, you're right. He could be very good. This could be their year, man. It is going to be, as things move forward, it is going to be so interesting with, with Texas and Georgia and Oregon and Ohio State. I think those. Right now, those are the big matchups looking forward.
Right.
That where we would say, oh man, it's going to come down to this, and possibly even in the playoffs, possibly depending on how these things will work out.
Oh
yeah. Those are the big matchups that right now as we look at it and we'll see how these teams have performed. That's going to be the big matchup because so far what we've seen. To what we've seen, the teams that of course Georgia, we kind of expected that. Texas kind of expected that.
Yep.
USC has been the other team that's really impressed me, and I wouldn't say that I did expect that. I always think they're going to be okay, but now they may have gotten over the hump, So another team that looks really really good. So yeah, man, it's just really going to be exciting.
Yeah, we haven't even really touched much on the Big 12. We'll get into some of them in a little bit next week. But obviously, Utah looks to be the team in that, only because of what they've done historically the last couple of years coming out of the Pac-12. Oklahoma State should have a lot to say about that because they were in the championship game last year against Texas, who is not in the Big 12 anymore. So that de facto moves them up. So seeing what happens in the Big 12 with a couple of other new teams in there, I think it's Arizona and I think BYU, of course, Cincinnati. But yeah, Utah, they're going to have some games too and chances. I know Cam Rising hurt his finger last week, but I don't even know what his status is because I think the coach there doesn't like talking about injuries. And it's not the NFL where you have to. So, but yeah, USC has got a little stock rising. We'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks.
Right.
The games are coming. I think after this week, 4, 5, and 6 got some crazy games across the board in a lot of the conferences. That's really gonna at some point. It's going to feel like November, and it's still like late September, early October because of the matchups and how it sets teams up to win their conference and then or get to the conference championship game, which the teams that lose those have a good chance of still getting to the 12 team. Notre Dame, if they don't really ramp it up, they're going to have some issues. Basically, they got to run a table and hope NIU wins the MAC. That way they look that much good to get into the 12. As NIU goes out and gets killed by a bunch of teams, it just doesn't hurt them. It doesn't help them at all. It hurts them actually. So that's down the road. But
yeah,
a lot of good stuff coming up.
Well, I think that week, the week coming up, I'm not sure this next week because I think a couple of those teams may have a bye. How that works out, but the following week, that's the week that matchups are just insane.
Yep.
You have huge matchups across the board with all the big teams like you're saying that's coming up, and I believe that maybe what will we see week 5 possibly.
Week 4 is USC and Michigan. I know that that's next week. So there would be week 5, and I believe that is
USC and Michigan are next week. Alabama and Georgia both have a bye. So I was thinking that following week, Ohio State, Michigan State, Georgia, Alabama. It's some really big matchup. I'll tell you, going back to the Big Ten, I'll tell you something that I was watching, just from the highlights that I was watching was Illinois.
Yes.
They seem to, they played pretty good, so Wisconsin, USC, Arizona, Utah, Oklahoma State, Kansas State. Just huge matchups in that week 5. So,
oh yeah. And Illinois upset Kansas last week. That was somewhat of an upset.
It was.
So Brett Bielema, he's done decently there. He had one year where he just didn't win as much, but he did really well when he was at Wisconsin as a coach, and then he went to Arkansas and didn't do a whole lot of nothing. Now he's back in the Big Ten, and that's his alma mater, Illinois. So I got them picking Michigan when they played them. Well, I got everybody to beat Michigan when they played them, so that's not a really fair pick.
Hey, understandable. I get it. Yes.
So we're looking at 9:38. We got a few more minutes. You want to head out or?
No, I got a couple of minutes actually. Bus driving job, and I took a midday, so it starts at 10 o'clock. So
no problem.
The good part about it is I can be to work in about a minute and a half.
Yeah.
I'm here, just literally a block away from me, so that's I can be there really quick.
Yeah. So we haven't really touched on Ole Miss yet, which we're not going to do this week. That's another team that's going to have something to say about the SEC, especially when they get into playing the teams. I think the games have been a little on the lighter side. Everybody has those, so it's not pointing them out. It's just saying it's like Ohio State. They've looked really good. They haven't really played anybody, so their games are coming. We'll really find out how good they are. They got the talent. We just need to know, against better opposition, are they going to look better? I've watched a lot of film study. Chip Kelly's doing some nice things I haven't seen them do since before he's been there on offense. Their defense looks really good. So I feel good about Ohio State.
Well, Chip Kelly is one of the best offensive guys in college football across the board. So, Ohio State took a big step forward. They changed their defensive guy, a year ago. And
a couple years ago,
yeah. They bring Chip Kelly in, and all the talent that they have, all the 5 stars. I've said in the last couple of weeks, on paper, they're probably the best team in the nation. Now when it comes down to playing, the other big boys, we'll see how that plays out. But I don't see them having any issue going through the Big Ten, which is, that's been the case for the most part of the last dozen years or whatever. But they're probably just as talented, but I think that they have better coaching. And when I say better coaching, I'm talking about the head coach. I'm talking about the offensive guy, the defensive guy. That's where the big difference is. And we've talked in the past, the guys that have really done well have surrounded themselves with those kind of people. Ryan Day, I'm assuming he's finally figured that out, that's what he had to do. You look at Nick Saban bringing in Lane Kiffin, bringing in Steve Sarkisian, you look at those things, and those were the teams that, and you look at Kirby Smart and what he's doing with Georgia. Yes, it is all about the head coach, but it's also all about who he brings in to help him on the
Oh yeah,
offensive, the defensive side of the ball. That's
because
the
when you're good, you lose your coaches. That's how it goes. Alabama's
well,
done it.
absolutely.
Georgia's done it. Ohio State's done it since Urban got there. Guys start Herman, Fickle, guys, Shiano, guys just start. Shiano came from somewhere else, and then, now he's back at Rutgers. It just happens. You get elite. Needs to stay elite is tough. And the CEO type coaches are the ones that do that. You go Ryan Day, just the first year he's not calling plays. And it's not because he's not good at calling plays, but when you're managing everything else, you just don't see it. I think the best thing is when you got a guy either in the booth or on the field, it doesn't really matter as long as he is able to concentrate on play calling. Because when the teams are pretty much evenly matched, so to speak, or close to it, it's a chess game. You just got to figure out ways to get the matchups against the other guy's defensive coordinator and his play calling. And it's interesting to watch. It has been, and it's fun because Jim Knowles is great, but sometimes he gets beat, and vice versa. They all are that way, so it's just fun to watch.
Yeah, and going back, the Ohio State thing, and Ryan Day calling plays. A lot of Ohio State fans had issues with him calling plays.
Yep.
I think we might even be able to include Fletch in that conversation. But so I mean, there has been times you go, what in the world? What is going on here? So I think that's something that's probably going to be much better for Ohio State. So I mean, a big plus for them.
Yep.
Going back, the Ole Miss thing. We know what we see with Ole Miss. Ole Miss every year seems to be. Ole Miss is kind of like a Penn State. They do great, and then when it comes to it, whenever they got to play the big boys, the other big boys in the division, when they match up with the Alabamas and the Georgias, and so what? Much like Penn State and Michigan and Ohio State and all that, then they seem to come back into the pack,
right?
But I mean, they seem to be great until they run into the elite,
right? My observation, not being an SEC guy, it seems since Lane Kiffin's been there, they've been building a good offense, but they don't really have the defense to really back it up. So they're scoring a ton of points, but they're giving up. I mean, there was a few years ago where them in Alabama, what was it, 50 to 40 something? It was nuts. I mean, they were just up and down the field on both sides.
They had the one game a couple years ago that was insane. And going back, you're talking about, how. I mean, these guys that bring in the really good coaches, you're going to lose those coaches eventually. It happened in Alabama several times for years. And, I mean, going into, for example, and you bring Chip Kelly in, and I'm assuming he's going to do really well.
Right.
May win a national championship. I think they certainly have a good opportunity to do that. But then, then what happens? Does Florida looking for a guy? Is Florida State looking for a guy? How much money? How much money are they going to throw at somebody? And in my mind, Chip Kelly would probably be one of those guys.
I would think so. He said he left UCLA because he didn't much for the same reasons as Saban. He didn't want to deal with the NIL and all that. If that's true, that would be the only reason to keep him from head coach again, unless the money is so ridiculous and NIL maybe changes in another year, which they're expecting it to be a little more regulated. And maybe because a lot of these schools are hiring GMs now to handle that stuff, so the head coach don't have to worry about it. So if the landscape changes where he's feeling better, he might be more apt to come back, especially with a couple commas in the payroll.
Well, and that'll happen. Know that'll happen. I mean, they throw ridiculous amounts of money at these guys. I mean, look at the guys getting the NIL money. The ridiculous amounts they're getting. I mean, now as the coaching thing evolves, it's going to even get. I mean, they're going to be able to name their price.
Yeah.
So say I don't want to coach anymore. Well, we'll give you a 5-year, $200 million. Oh, wait, I'm in.
Yeah. I thought Kevin Moore did that. I'm not leaving. Washington. I'm not leaving Washington.
Right.
He's leaving Washington. It is Alabama, there's no doubt, but I'm sure there was some money in there that the boosters like, I think you're leaving money. Here's your house. Here's your car. Here's your plane.
Yeah, I mean, if it did happen that it's much like when the Texas A&M job opened up, but if a Florida or a Florida State or some really big program with tons of money opens up, I mean that certainly opens up who they can bring in because of unlimited funds, basically.
Yeah. Real quick before we go, because I wanted to get your opinion on one more thing that happened last week. How happy were you and or shocked or both of Cal going into Auburn and taking a win?
Well, I said I really don't like LSU, and
Right.
I like LSU less than Auburn. But of course, when it comes to, when it comes to rivalry,
Right.
to me, there's none bigger than Auburn and Alabama. So I mean, when Auburn loses, I'm certainly okay with that. Uh, not as happy as I am when LSU loses.
Okay.
But, because basically to me, I don't. I mean, Auburn is okay. They've had a couple of coaches I haven't really cared for all that much, and
Right.
obviously, I'm never rooting for them.
Right.
But I basically know that it's going to come down to the Iron Bowl,
Right.
and whether Auburn is 2-8 and Alabama is 9-1, or vice versa, it's not going to matter because it's going to come down to that game. And like I said, regardless of records, that is going to be a battle,
Oh yeah.
and it's going to, it has huge implications for Alabama. I mean, for the
Yeah.
state of Alabama, because that's all
Right.
there is.
Right.
That's all there is down there. And of course, it's late in the year, so it can have a huge effect on playoffs and positioning and all that kind of stuff. So, anyways, I mean, my point is, the Auburn thing. I mean, I'm okay with Auburn until the Iron Bowl, and then
Right.
then
Did you see
we have to
Cal
go.
at all? Did you see them getting that win?
I
at all?
did.
Did you? Okay,
Yeah.
I did, but you would know more than I would. I would thought
Usually-
Hugh Freeze was going to be really good in the second year. That was a shocker to me.
Yeah, usually what I do on those kind of games is I always go to the SEC network for the highlights of those games in the SEC, so I can catch. I mean, because it's impossible for me to watch them all,
Right.
but I try to catch as many as I can. But I always either go, if there's a game I want to see, I'll go to that network, and you usually get a pretty good idea of how those things went because they show extensive footage of how things went. So I did see that.
All right. I know you got to go, so we're going to call it for today, so you can get to your
Okay.
business. But
All right,
enjoy
sounds great.
enjoy the football, man. It's going to be another great weekend, and we got so many great weekends coming up here between now and basically the end of the year. It's really going to ramp up, and October's going to be a crazy month too. So we'll get on to that starting next week and all that. So enjoy the games. I'm sure there'll be episodes we'll be talking about, and we'll be texting each other. And have a good weekend, brother.
Yep. We'll
All
see
right,
you
we'll
guys.
see. Yep, give us likes and bells and all that stuff all over, and we'll see all you guys next week.